Hi, my name is Michelle and I'm from the NUS Museum. Today I'll be bringing you on a virtual tour of our very own University Art Museum on campus as part of Here E today. Before we go into the exhibition galleries, I'm just going to give you a little bit of our history. So the NUS Museum was actually opened in 1955, which makes us actually the first institutional art museum in Singapore. The university then was actually known as the University of Malaya even, and so our name was the University of Malaya Art Museum. As the University of Malaya Art Museum, it was actually started by Professor Michael Sullivan to support the teaching of art history, as well as to facilitate research into the art and archaeology of Singapore and Southeast Asia. As the first institutional art museum in Singapore, it meant that we were also greatly involved in the development of art and culture in the 1950s. Today, we have amassed over 10,000 objects across 4 collections, of which 3 of the collections are located here on the Kentridge campus and that we'll give you a glimpse of today through the virtual tour. Our 4 collections include the South and Southeast Asian Collection, which is a collection of modern and contemporary Southeast Asian and Singapore art, and was the first collection that was started in 1955. The second collection is the Lee Kong Chian Chinese Collection. The Lee Kong Chian Chinese Collection is an extensive collection of Chinese ceramics, bronzes and jades, including ink paintings from both modern and contemporary artists today. The Lee Kong Chian Collection is interesting because it started at Nanyang University before making its way over to the Kentridge campus. Why? Because the Nanyang University and University of Singapore merged to form the National University of Singapore in 1980. The third collection is the Ng Eng Teng Collection. The Ng Eng Teng Collection is by one artist only, by the name of Ng Eng Teng. He was a famous sculptor in Singapore, and you will see many of his public artworks around the country. His collection includes sculptures, paintings, sketches, sketchbooks, and it's an interesting collection because it's the biggest collection owned by any museum in Singapore. Now we'll make our way into the museum. We're actually now on the concourse level of the NUS Museum, about to enter the permanent collection exhibition, Radio Malaya, A Bridge Conversations About Art. Radio Malaya, the exhibition, brings together our collection of artworks together with a radio play written by S. Rajaratnam. This radio play's name is called A Nation in the Making and was broadcasted in 1957 on 6 parts via the radio channel Radio Malaya. As you can see from this text over here, the radio play is in narrative form. However, what it really was an encapsulation of ideas by Rajaratnam about community and nation as Singapore went towards self-government and eventual independence. Together, the radio play is actually featured alongside this side of the exhibition on the left and our artworks on the right. Our artworks begin from the earliest artworks that we collected in 1955 to some of the more recent works that was brought into the collection in 2016. Together, as you walk through the exhibition galleries, you'll weave between the text as well as the artworks, and hopefully, depending on your academic background, your interests, you will generate new perspectives beyond what the museum has put forth. We also have several gallery guides that provides frames of references that you can read the exhibition through, and many of these guides were actually created by our own interns. So follow me into the gallery as we look at some of the artworks in closer detail. So in this side of the gallery, you can see these are our artworks from the 1950s and 1960s. Popularly, they are known as the Nanyang style of artworks because this was when artists began to include both Western as well as Chinese art techniques, combining them together to form something that was uniquely Singapore. If you look at these artworks around you, you also see that these are scenes of Singapore as well, and they are both oil paintings and ink paintings. But what I'm going to introduce to you now is something slightly more different. It's actually called a woodblock print. We are now looking at a cluster of 3 woodblock prints. Woodblock prints are personally very special to me as well because they were my first introduction to the NUS Museum's collection. A woodblock print is actually created not by drawing onto a piece of paper, but rather, as its name suggests, carving onto a piece of wood. So an artist will have a block of wood, carve onto it, ink it with the black color ink, and then print it on a piece of paper. Now, because there was the woodblock print, it meant that you could make multiple copies of the artwork just from one block of wood, rather than say an oil painting or ink painting where you can only make one piece. People had to go to a museum or exhibition gallery to look at it. With a woodblock print, you could print it onto a cover, for instance, or in the newspaper, and that meant that the impact of the woodblock print can be very much more diffuse across different groups of people than say an artwork could be. Now, if you look at the woodblock print, you also see that there are many details that you can actually discern, and it's even more impressive when you consider that a woodblock print had to be created by carving on a piece of wood, using sharp objects to create the image that they wanted to. So that meant that they had also a lot of labor involved in the making of a piece of work, and if you think about it, the carving of a piece of wood is a very violent and sharp act as part of the process. So that also probably could have contributed to the ways that the image was also created and the ways that the image was chosen. We're now looking at a woodblock print called the May 13 incident, and it was of a particular historical episode in Singapore of a student uprising. If you look at the woodblock print in detail, you'll notice that there are actually more than just one student in the work. There are actually 5 or 6 individuals surrounding a policeman who look like he's about to strike down a student. The details of a woodblock print is even more impressive when you take a look at smaller pieces like that. If you look closely, you'll see that there are a lot of details to be discerned, which you wouldn't be able to see if you're looking at it from afar. Now, this is a very pastoral scene, a landscape scene, very much different from the May 13 incident one. And if you look closely, there are actually at least 5 figures of farmers who are toiling the land, and different flora and fauna, including the coconut trees, as well as the landscape behind. So we'll now move on to the next section of the museum, the top floor. Let's go. We are now at the top floor of the NUS Museum, about to enter one of our temporary exhibition galleries. On every floor, we have both permanent collection exhibitions and temporary exhibitions. They are both meant to problematize and contextualize each other, so they are carefully selected to be placed together on the same floor. The temporary exhibitions also tend to be collaborations with artists to introduce new contemporary practices as well as hone our curatorial abilities. We're about to enter an exhibition called Tropics, A Many Consequence, an exhibition with Ken Chan. Ken is a Singaporean filmmaker, and at the center of this exhibition is his short film called Sunny. Going towards Sunny, which is a short film played over 3 screens, this film inquires on how the tropical imaginary continues to frame aesthetic and artistic identities, as well as how the visual tropes of jungle and frontier are intimately connected to our state and colonial projections of the region. The film tells the story of how Ho Kok Ho, who was the president of the Singapore Art Society, travelled to London to hold the first ever exhibition of Singapore art in Europe. This film is actually a historical speculation of how that episode went. Ho Kok Ho apparently left Singapore without any plans, or at least not much details on how he would hold this exhibition. Through sheer luck and determination, Ho Kok Ho was actually able to organize the exhibition, featuring over 90 artworks in the first ever exhibition of Singapore art in London. It was also attended by a member of the British royal family, the Duchess of Kent. On the LED panels here, we actually have a vocabulary of words and terms related to the tropics, as well as the artwork captions in this exhibition and excerpts from the reviews of the 1955 exhibition. Together, a collection of words that then form the colonial perception of the tropics and also interrogate how they continue to pervade and linger in today's contemporary perceptions. So as you walk around the gallery, besides the film Sunny, you also notice that there are other artworks in this space. What we did during the process of this project was also to invite Ken Chan to dive into the museum's collection of Singapore art from the 1950s, at once to enhance his research by examining the artworks by artists who would have featured in the 1955 London exhibition, and also for us to bring our artworks from the collection to dialogue with the contemporary film that Ken has made. Here, Ken has 6 artworks to surround his film. Artists featured are Chong Soo Ping, Liu Kang, Chen Wen-si, and Chen Chong Sui, all pioneers of the Nanyang style and all had featured in the London exhibition. The juxtaposition of such works and Ken's film provides us the opportunity to examine the visual tropes and representation and together interrogate how tropics, modernity and artistic agency continues to feature in our art practices today. So surrounding the film Sunny are also 6 artworks from the museum's collection. These were all personally selected by Ken during the research process of the exhibition. We invited him to delve into our collection of Singapore art from the 1950s and 60s and to examine the artworks of artists who have featured in the London exhibition. Over here we have Chong Soo Ping. This is an oil painting called Pounding Rice. This was done in 1953. And next to it is a work by Chen Wen-si on gibbons. As you can see, this is an oil painting while this is a Chinese ink painting. So really quite different in style, but both produced around the same time. In this section, This is another ink painting by Chong Su-pei. But if you look at this ink painting, it looks more similar to the Chen Wen-si work than even his own oils. That's because it's likely that the dimensions of the work are very similar to the Chinese ink. But however, if you look closely at it, you will see that the ways that the work is being derived is actually more cubist in nature rather than the more expressive forms of Chinese ink. Here we have another work by Liu Kang. In this corner, we have two landscapes, one by Chen Chongsui and one by Suri Moyani. The Chen Chongsui work is interesting because when you look at it from afar, it looks like a traditional Chinese ink painting in both its dimensions as well as the way that the perspective of the mountains leads you towards to the bottom. If you look closer to the center, you'll see something very unusual, which is that it's not Chinese-style houses as you might expect, but rather a kampong that is at the side of a river, and the flora and fauna surrounding it. Chen Chongsui also begins to depict coconut trees, things that we are more used to than, say, the Chinese-style flora and fauna, which he did also incorporate into this work. So if you look at this work, it's almost like he's trying to showcase the Malayan environments, but while still trying to incorporate his Chinese ink painting techniques and his education into it. This is the kind of Nanyang style that we're talking about, where they begin to put things together to depict something uniquely Malayan. So now we're going to move on to another section of the gallery to showcase the artworks of Ng Eng Teng to you as well. So we are now in the permanent collection gallery for the Ng Eng Teng collection. Ng Eng Teng donated all these artworks to university before he passed away between 1997 to 2000. Altogether, we have almost 1,200 artworks ranging from sculpture, pots, sketches, paintings, as well as his sketchbooks. We have even some of his earlier works from his student years, such as this piece with the two Russian dolls that was completed in 1958, to his very last work called The Last Masterpiece. The Last Masterpiece was actually completed posthumously by his family after his death. The work comprises of cotton swabs of his blood that was taken during his dialysis treatment just before he passed away. If you look around the gallery, you'll notice that most of the artworks are about the human body. This was his primary artistic subject throughout his 4 decades of his artistic practice. On this second shelf, you will see this is what we call the Face to Torso series. The Face to Torso series was developed in the 90s when Ng Teng began to do nude sketching again. As he continued to sketch the human body, he realized that he could see the face in the torso and the torso in the face. And so this series of sculptures was created for that. When we look at it, we can see both features of the face to torso in just one piece. On this shelf below, we have a series of sculptures that are called the rockers. The rockers was Ng Teng's attempt to be more playful with his sculptures. Most sculptures tend to be quite solid, it's just sitting in one place, but with the rockers, you could actually move them so that they can actually make a sound for some of them. Unfortunately, we're not able to move the rockers for you right now because they are technically in storage. I would love to show you, but hopefully one day we'll be able to do so. Let's move on to another set of artworks here. On these two artworks in the middle, you will see how ably Ng Teng is able to manipulate the human body from a realistic form to a geometric form. The middle grey sculpture, the human is in a yoga pose, but when you look across to the next one, which is also another type of rocker, almost more seesaw-like in its form, you would think that it's not a human body at first, but when you look closer at it from the top, you can see that there are 2 circles in the middle. Those 2 circles actually represent the eyes. And if you look at the bottom, you'll see that that's kind of where the legs are. So that is the human body form that he is able to abstract out from a more realistic one over here. On the shelf below, you will see these 2 green sculptures. Besides the human body itself, Ng Teng was also interested in the human emotions and how do you express that. So these 2 sculptures on the bottom shelf, the 2 green ones, they are called wishful and they are called dreaming. I'll leave you to decide which emotion is attributed to which sculpture as you decide how you think about these 2 emotions yourself. So the Ng Eng Teng collection does not just include sculptures or finished pieces of work, it also includes maquettes, which is the sculptural equivalent of sketches. Maquettes were made when Ng Teng was moving from sketch to an object to see how the balance and proportions that he envisioned on paper would work in 3 dimensions. So you can see that they look prototypical in their development, and he will make multiple pieces to test out the various ways that he could manipulate the form. Maquettes will also be used for approval of his public artworks that he was proposing. So he would send his commissioners the maquette of the work that he intends to do. When it's approved, and then he'll move on to the figure form. So if we look at some of these pieces over here, they will look very familiar to us. So if you take a look at these two pieces here, this is the maquettes for Wealth and Contentment. We used to be placed at Plaza Singapura, but it's now outside the University Cultural Centre on campus. Behind, there's another very recognizable piece as well called Mother and Child. Mother and Child was placed at Orchard Road and is now at Orchard Parade Hotel. Over here, we have another recognizable piece. In the center, where there's one circular ball in the middle, this was placed at Changi Airport Terminal 1 and would greet arriving passengers who came to Singapore. This is the last piece of work that we're going to show you today. It is called 1 + 1 = 1, and it's actually the entire exhibition's title as well. 1 + 1 = 1 is actually a series of 6 artworks, and it's one of the most unusual ones in Inkting's collection because it is actually mechanically produced rather than molded by hand as you would usually do for everything else. 1 + 1 = 1, when you look at it, sounds like it's wrong. 1 + 1 technically does not equal to 1. But why would Inkting name a sculpture like that? So if we look a bit more closely at the artwork, I think we can begin to see why. When you look at this piece of work at the beginning, all we probably see is the lines in the center. But if we were to tilt our heads a little bit to the right, hopefully something else starts to emerge. What you will probably start to see is actually the side profile of a face. So this is the eyes, this is the nose, and these are the lips. So it's actually 2 interlocking faces in one, in a very intimate kind of embrace that we see here. So what we actually have here is 1 + 1 = 1. So 1 + 1 = 1, rather than a mathematics equation, is 2 separate units coming together. So what Inkting's 1 + 1 = 1 teaches us is that we should actually be looking beyond the surface of what we see and to interrogate of what we know. And hopefully today we have shown you some artworks as well as the exhibitions, and that you'll come down yourself to make sense of it and see it through your own eyes and to make sense of it beyond what I've shared with you today. We hope to see you at the NUS Museum soon. Bye! Good evening, everyone. We hope you enjoyed your whirlwind tour of the NUS Museum. There were quite a few more galleries we didn't have the time to show you, so we hope you'll come down soon to see it for yourself. The museum is now open from Tuesdays to Saturdays, but as we are a Nutrus campus facility, don't forget to check your zone assigned days before you come to visit. So now is the time for us to take some questions. It can be on anything you just saw in the tour or even other questions you have about the museum and our programs. Can we have the first question, please? So the first question is, since there are so many pieces in the museum's collection, how do you choose what to put on display? Yes, we have over 10,000 objects, so it's quite a challenge for us to decide what we would like, but that depends also on our exhibitions as well as the kind of conservation rate that we have to put our objects out. So some objects need to rest a bit longer, so they only can be shown for a short period of time, and our curators will make the best choice available then. Can we have the next question, please? Why does Sony have red and blue screens? That's a really good question, one that I also asked our curators when I first saw it. But when you look at the video, the Sony video itself has a lot of greenery in there. So the red and blue screens are meant to counteract that green color, to have that primary colors that are so much part of paintings that can be found in the galleries itself. Thank you for that question. Can I have the next one, please? So the next question is, how long are the temporary exhibitions on show for? Our temporary exhibitions are generally on show for at least 6 months, and they can stretch to about a year and a half. And that's to correspond with our permanent exhibitions that are on for 3 years or so. So in that period of time, we hope that extended conversations can be had between the temporary exhibitions and the permanent exhibitions. And they're also there for a good period of time for people to come back repeatedly to see the exhibitions again. Can I have the next question? So this question is, what is the significance of the last masterpiece, especially given Ng Ting's interest in the human body? Were there also any concerns or special considerations taken for this piece? Yes, the last masterpiece is actually a really poignant work. It is the last work that was done by Ng Ting and completed by his family based on his written instructions. And it was the last artwork delivered to the museum as part of the Ng Ting collection in 2001. It's a beautiful piece. In fact, I always thought it at the beginning is always a little bit strange because it's made up of blood from Ng Eng Teng's own dialysis treatment. But after a while, as I saw it over the years, I realized that it's actually a very beautiful piece in the sense that for a man who has made so much works about the human body that we see in the gallery, this last work of his is from his own body itself, and that he's always a part of his collection too, that he has so generously donated to the university and to the museum for all students to use as part of our studies in not just in NUS but in all education in Singapore. Yeah. So I hope you'll come down and check out the work yourself and to take a look at it. Can we have the next question, please? So this question is, a lot of the women in Ng Eng Teng's sculptures look pregnant and there is a mother and child theme. Why is that? There's several reasons. For one reason is that that kind of pregnant look that you see is also meant to support the base of the sculpture. So there's a very structural reason for that, and it's called a bulbous base. With a bulbous base to the sculptures, you can actually sit the sculpture down on the gallery floors, on the gallery pedestal without any additional support. So it's a very stable piece of work in that sense. So Eng Teng did a lot of kind of technical considerations when he also looked at the piece of work and its form. And why is there a mother and child theme? Well, he was very, very close to his family, and he owns a lot of gratitude to them. So in some of his interviews, he has actually said that if not for his family giving him the space in their home for him to build his kiln and for him to have his studio, his works wouldn't be around and he wouldn't get so much freedom to be able to pursue an artistic career in the 60s, which is, of course, something that is quite rare and difficult to pursue at that period of time. So that mother and child and even father and child theme recurs very much throughout his practice, throughout the 4 decades of his career. Yeah. Can we have the next question? The question is, what are the purpose of the rockers? Is it just to encourage interaction with the art piece, or is there more purposes? I think primarily, yes, is to encourage interaction with the piece. Eng Teng also had a very playful style to these works, and he wanted to kind of explore that through the rocker series. Is there more significance to that? Well, in some of the rocker pieces, you can actually hear a sound when you rock the sound. So it not just incorporates movement, but it incorporates sound into a sculptural piece as well, which is again fairly rare, I think, in terms of sculpture. When you look at it, it seems like a very solid piece of work. But with the rockers, there's sound, there's movement, and you can see how it interacts with the viewers as well. So it's a very ingenious way that such a small piece of work can incorporate so many elements into it. Yeah. Can we have the next question? So this will be our last question, and this question is, what is my favorite work? Well, my favorite work is actually a woodblock print called Backstage of a Puppet Theatre by the Singaporean artist Lim Mu Hui. And this is a work that incorporates the wood block and the print itself, like I shared earlier in the video. And this work is very special to me because it's one of the first works I saw in the NUS Museum when I was a student myself in NUS. And it was a piece that I wrote an assignment on. So I did a lot of extensive research into that piece, and so it's remained very dear to my heart in this last decade of me working in, from being a student to working in a museum today. So that was our last question. Thank you so much for all your questions. There was quite a lot of interesting ones. And I hope that there was a great opportunity for us to share more about the museum itself. And we hope that you learned a bit more and you'll come down to visit the museum very soon. Now, as promised, we'll be revealing the winners of the NUS Museum Instagram Challenge. So if we can have the slides. This is the third prize that goes to Ed Rao Tisa, who recreated this work called Garden of Eden, which is actually on show in the Ng Eng Teng Gallery right now. The second prize is awarded to Ed Jacob Y, who recreated Ng Eng Teng's own self-portrait. And the grand prize goes to Ed Kazi Z, who took on the challenge of this painting called Girl with Orchid. Congratulations to the winners, and thank you all for participating in this challenge and for all your hard work and creativity. We really enjoyed looking at all your submissions, and we hope that you also had fun while learning something new about Ng Eng Teng's beautiful sculptures. You can now head on over to the Here Arts Carnival website to see all the winning entries on the IG Challenge webpage, and the winners will be contacted soon for more details on how to receive your prizes. Again, thank you so much for spending this time with us this evening. We hope you'll come by to visit the NUS Museum as well as the NUS Baba House very soon. Or join us at our upcoming talks and film screenings that we'll be sending into your inbox for more information soon. Thank you so much and have a good night.